In the autumn of 2008, Seattle carried a crisp chill in the air and the bustling rhythm of a rising tech city. At Pike Place Market, the lively heart of countless busy stalls, Aisha Carter, a 24-year-old African-American woman, weaved her way through the crowd with a tray of drinks. At 23, Aisha worked as a server for corporate events, a temporary job that helped her pay rent and keep her dream of becoming an environmental engineer alive. With bright eyes and a warm smile, she masked the exhaustion of long shifts and the scrutinizing glances from clients, who sometimes couldn't hide their prejudice toward a black woman like her. Pike Place hosted an event for Whitmore Technologies, a leading tech corporation, that day. The hall was lavishly decorated, warm golden lights shining down on expensive suits and conversations about stocks and multi-million-dollar deals. Aisha moved skillfully through the crowd, a tray of champagne in hand, her professional smile never fading. She was used to being invisible in places like this, where she was merely part of the backdrop, nothing more. But today, something felt different. As she paused to serve a group of guests, a deep voice came from behind. "You have a very captivating smile." Aisha turned around, slightly surprised. Standing before her was James Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Technologies, a man she only knew from business magazine articles. He was tall, with neatly combed blonde hair, sharp blue eyes, and the confident demeanor of someone accustomed to leading every room he entered. At 32, James was the epitome of American success, a white man born into privilege and heir to a tech empire built by his family. Aisha smiled politely and replied, "Thank you, sir, but I'm doing my job." She was about to walk away, but James continued, his voice tinged with curiosity. "You're not like the other servers. Where are you from?" The question, though seemingly harmless, made Aisha pause for a moment. She had heard similar questions far too many times, often laced with the assumption that she didn't belong. "I was born in Chicago, but I live here in Seattle now," she answered, her voice even. James nodded, his gaze still fixed on her. "Chicago is a great city. What do you do outside of this?" He motioned to the tray, as if trying to extend the conversation. Aisha hesitated. She wasn't used to sharing her dreams with strangers, especially not with men like James, who seemed to live in a completely different world. But something about how he looked at her, as if he genuinely wanted to know, made her open up. "I'm saving up to study environmental engineering. I want to design technologies that help clean the ocean." James raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed. "Environmental engineering? Ambitious. Whitmore Technologies has a renewable energy division. You should consider sending in your resume." Before Aisha could respond, James's colleague called him back to the banquet table. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, handing it to her with a confident smile. "Call me if you'd like to talk more about the ocean or anything else." Aisha took the card, her fingers grazing the gold-embossed lettering. James Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Technologies. She slipped it into the pocket of her uniform, unsure of what she would do with it. As James turned and melted back into the crowd, Aisha felt a faint flicker of hope, accompanied by caution. She knew all too well that men like James rarely saw the real worth of women like her. At the end of her shift, as she cleared the leftover glasses of wine, Aisha pulled the business card from her pocket and reread it under the dim lights of the back room. She thought about her hardships, the job interviews she'd been rejected for not fitting the company image, the skeptical looks whenever she spoke of her engineering dreams, and the sleepless nights spent worrying about rent. As a black woman in Seattle, she had learned not to trust easy promises. But this business card, though just a slip of paper, seemed to carry either a chance or a risk. As she exited Pike Place, the Seattle sky had turned to drizzle. Aisha pulled her thin coat over her head and walked briskly toward the bus stop. James's business card sat like a quiet reminder in her pocket that her life could change, but only if she was brave enough to seize the opportunity. She didn't know yet that this brief encounter would lead her to unimaginable heights, but also through the deepest valleys of betrayal and self-affirmation. Seattle, Spring 2009. Aisha Carter stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment in Rainier Valley, adjusting a simple yet elegant dress. Tonight, she met James Whitmore at a discreet restaurant on the city's outskirts, where no one knew them. 2 months had passed since their encounter at Pike Place Market. Aisha had called the number on James's business card, never expecting a brief conversation to lead to secret dates, weekend getaways, and a relationship that filled her heart with excitement and unease. With the charm and confidence of a powerful CEO, James had swept Aisha into a world of luxury she had never known. 5-star hotels, surprise gifts like a pearl necklace, or plane tickets to a secluded cabin on Whidbey Island made her feel like the protagonist of a fairy tale. But this fairy tale had shadows. James never took her to public events or introduced her to friends or colleagues. "My family is rigorous, Aisha," he would say whenever she asked. "They expect me to be with people who fit into their world." His words, though gentle, always left a cut on her heart, a reminder that she, a black woman, a service worker, was not suitable in the eyes of the Whitmore family. Though Aisha loved James, she couldn't ignore the inequality in their relationship. She often faced curious stares from hotel staff or servers, as if they silently questioned what a black woman like her was doing beside a powerful white man like James. One time, at an upscale restaurant, the manager asked her to present identification, something James wasn't subjected to. James laughed it off, calling it a misunderstanding, but Aisha felt humiliated. She began to wonder, did James truly see her as an equal? Or was she just a curiosity, an escape from his high-pressure life? Aisha's inner conflict grew stronger. She continued working at Pike Place by day, saving every dollar to pursue her engineering dream. By night, when she was with James, she was swept up in sweet moments, like when he listened attentively to her ideas about filtering microplastics from the ocean, or held her hand under the starry sky. In those moments, she believed James truly loved her, that one day he would rise above his family's prejudice and make their relationship public. But her logic, hardened by years of facing racial discrimination, kept reminding her that love wasn't enough to erase the divide of class and skin color. One evening, in a luxurious hotel in downtown Seattle, Aisha decided to face the truth. As James embraced her from behind, she turned to him, her voice firm. "James, have you considered taking me to one of your company events? I want to be part of your real life, not just these hidden moments." James paused briefly, the smile on his lips fading. "Aisha, you know I love you. But my world, it isn't very easy. My father and the shareholders have expectations I haven't figured out how to change." He took her hand as if to soothe her. "Please, give me time. Okay?" Aisha nodded, but inside, a crack had formed. She realized that no matter how much James loved her, he wasn't ready to stand up to society to protect her. She thought of her mother, a nurse who had raised her in Chicago, who once told her, "Never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough, no matter how powerful they are." Her mother's words echoed in her mind, making Aisha wonder if she was losing herself by accepting James's secret. As she left the hotel, Aisha stepped onto the street, the city lights reflecting off her face. She pulled the pearl necklace James had given her from her pocket, admiring it under the glow. It was beautiful, but also a symbol of a relationship where she couldn't be her true self. She put it away, resolving that, whatever the future held with James, she would not abandon her dream of becoming an engineer, nor her self-worth. She didn't yet know that just a few months later, a truth would emerge that would change everything, thrusting her into a challenge greater than anything she had ever faced. Autumn 2009. Seattle was cloaked in a thin layer of fog, softening the glow of the lights from the ships docked at Puget Sound. Aisha Carter, now 24 years old, stood alone on the deserted pier, her hands trembling as she clutched the pregnancy test stick in her coat pocket. Two bright pink lines stood clearly, confirming what she had suspected for weeks. She was pregnant, with James Whitmore's child. Her heart pounded, caught between hope and anxiety. After nearly 2 years in a secret relationship with James, Aisha believed this news could bring them closer together or break everything apart. She had called James that morning, trying to keep her voice calm. "James, I need to see you. It's important." He replied with a hint of concern, but was still busy, as always. "I'm swamped with meetings, Aisha, but I'll meet you at the pier near Pike Place at 6 p.m. Aisha agreed, silently picturing a future where James would embrace her and promise to build a family together. She thought of her mother back in Chicago, who had raised her alone and vowed that her child would never grow up without love. But deep down, a quiet voice warned her about the inequality in their relationship, about the times James avoided going public with her because my family wasn't ready. As the sunset cast a red hue over the water, Aisha arrived early, her steps slow along the worn wooden boards. She wore a simple sweater, her curly hair tied back, trying to mask her anxiety. The waves lapping at the dock matched the rhythm of her heart, both yearning and afraid. Right at 6, a silver Mercedes glided into view, and James stepped out, dressed in a camel-colored designer coat, his expression colder than usual. "What's so urgent, Aisha?" he asked, his voice tinged with the impatience of a man who equates time with money. Aisha took a deep breath, mustering all her courage. "James, I'm pregnant," she said, attempting a shaky smile. "We're going to have a baby." She pulled the test from her pocket and held it to him, waiting for a reaction. A hug, a promise, anything to show he'd be there. But James's face stiffened, his sharp blue eyes turning to steel. "That's not possible," he said, his voice low, nearly a whisper. "We've always been careful. Are you sure it's mine?" The question stabbed Aisha like a knife. She stepped back, breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean by that? You know I haven't been with anyone else." The pain surged, but she tried to keep her voice steady. James ran a hand through his blonde hair, clearly irritated. "Be realistic, Aisha. You're a server without formal education. A mixed-race child will ruin my reputation, my family's, the company's. Wall Street won't tolerate this." His words, steeped in racial and class prejudice, struck her like a slap. Her world tilted, dreams of family crumbling. James pulled out his Italian leather wallet and quickly scribbled a figure on a check that made Aisha dizzy, enough to pay her college tuition several times over. "Take it," he said, holding out the check. "Use it to handle this. You're young, Aisha. Don't make life harder on yourself." Aisha looked at the check, her heart shattering. "Do you think you can buy our child? Buy me to erase it?" she shouted, her voice cracking from rage and pain. James sighed as if she were a naive child. "You have nothing to raise a child. Some rundown apartment, double shifts at a cafe. I'm about to close a $1 billion deal. I don't need this complication." He paused, then added coldly, "You've been a burden I've tolerated for the past 2 years. Go back to where you belong." Those final words hit like a punch, leaving Aisha frozen. James turned and walked back to his Mercedes without looking back. When the car door slammed shut, Aisha had never felt more alone. She dropped to her knees, picking up the check, which was now damp on the wooden dock. For a moment, she thought about the challenges ahead. Raising a child alone, her university dream, the judgmental eyes of society. But then, with slow determination, she tore the check into pieces and let the wind carry them into the dark water. Standing up, Aisha wiped her tears, her hand unconsciously touching her belly. "We don't need him," she whispered to the unborn child. "Mommy will show you we're worth more than that." She walked away from the dock, head held high, unaware that this painful moment would become the fire behind a journey that would one day change the world. Winter 2009. Seattle was bitterly cold, but the chill inside Aisha Carter's heart was even harsher. After the painful confrontation with James Whitmore at the dock, 24-year-old Aisha returned to her small apartment in Rainier Valley, carrying both emotional wounds and a growing life inside her. She stood before the mirror, staring into her tired eyes, silently promising herself that James's betrayal would not define her future or her child's. But the reality was unforgiving. She had only a few $100s in savings, and her job as a server at Pike Place Market became increasingly complex as her pregnancy started to show. One morning, as Aisha struggled to fasten the buttons of her uniform, Mr. Harmon, the restaurant manager, called her into his office. "Customers have complained, Aisha," he said, avoiding her eyes. "The image of a pregnant server doesn't align with our brand." Aisha stood straight, her voice firm. "You mean a black pregnant server, don't you?" Harmon didn't respond. He slid her final paycheck across the desk. "Today is your last shift." Aisha took the check, her chest tightening as she realized how her value in society seemed to diminish in proportion to the size of her belly. With no job, Aisha couldn't pay rent. She was forced to sell most of her belongings, keeping only a suitcase of clothes and a few old engineering books. Thankfully, LaToya Brooks, a close friend she had met in a community ESL class, invited her to share a small room in Beacon Hill. LaToya, a black woman and a single mother, understood Aisha's struggle. "It's cramped, but it's a home," LaToya said, helping Aisha arrange her things on the double bed they would take turns using. The room smelled of mildew, and arguments from neighbors echoed through thin walls, but Aisha knew it was her only chance to stay afloat. To survive, Aisha took a job at Green Tech Recycling, an e-waste facility on the outskirts of Seattle. The work was grueling. 10-hour shifts standing by a conveyor belt, sorting motherboards and components from companies like Whitmore Technologies, a bitter irony. The air inside the plant was stifling, heavy with chemical fumes, making Aisha worry for the baby inside her. "Keep your mask on at all times," warned Fatima, the shift lead, handing her thick gloves. "Pregnant or not, the rules are the same." Aisha nodded, but each day wore down her body, her legs swelling, her back aching. Even so, Aisha never relinquished her dream of becoming an engineer. At night, when LaToya worked late shifts at the hospital, Aisha sat at a small folding table, the dim desk lamp lighting up borrowed technical books from the library. She read about water purification, microplastics, and renewable energy, taking notes for a self-sustaining ocean filtration system. While sorting waste at the plant one evening, Aisha noticed broken motherboards from Whitmore Technologies, some still containing salvageable parts. She asked permission to take a few fragments home and began building rudimentary models on the kitchen table. "You're crazy, Aisha," LaToya laughed, watching her solder under the flickering light. "But I believe you'll do something big." Aisha's internal struggle deepened. She remembered her mother's words. "Don't let the world tell you you're not good enough." But the judgmental stares at work and the murmurs about single black moms in the supermarket aisles made her sometimes question herself. One night, after a long day, Latoya hugged her, and Aisha broke down in tears. "I'm scared I won't be enough for this baby, Latoya. What if I fail?" Latoya held her hand tightly, voice steady. "You've survived worse. Your child is going to be proud to have you as a mom." One night, with her belly large, Aisha awoke from a light cramp. She rubbed her stomach, feeling her child move, and suddenly, an idea came to her. A filtration system that used natural vortex force to separate microplastics inspired by the swirling water in a sink. She rushed to sketch it out, her hands trembling with excitement. "You're going to be an engineer like Mama," she whispered to her unborn child, her eyes shining for the first time in months. Though still rough, this idea became a flicker of hope, a promise of a future where she and her child wouldn't just survive and help change the world. Summer 2009. The suffocating heat hung over Seattle. But in the delivery room of Harborview Public Hospital, Aisha Carter, 24, felt only the searing pain and profound loneliness. With no family by her side, only a kind nurse holding her hand through 18 hours of labor, Aisha gave birth to Daniel, a healthy baby boy with light blue eyes, a trait unmistakably from James Whitmore, the father who had rejected them both. When the nurse placed Daniel on her chest, Aisha burst into tears, not from pain, but from an overwhelming surge of love. "You are everything to me," she whispered, her heart flooding with a fierce resolve that Daniel would grow up knowing his worth, no matter what the world said. Just 2 weeks later, Aisha returned to work at Green Tech Recycling, carrying Daniel in a homemade sling fashioned from old fabric. "You can't bring a baby in here, Fatima," the shift supervisor protested. But the look in Aisha's eyes gave her pause. "If my son can't be here, then I can't be here either. We don't have another choice." After a tense silence, Fatima relented. "Please keep him in the sling, away from the chemical zones. If management sees him, you're on your own." Aisha nodded, gratitude mixed with apprehension, as she stepped onto the conveyor line, Daniel sleeping quietly against her chest. Aisha's life became a blur of exhaustion. By day, she worked 10-hour shifts, sorting e-waste from companies like Whitmore Technologies, enduring the stench of chemicals and the scrutinizing stares of coworkers. Some whispered behind her back, "A black single mom bringing her kid to work. Figures." Aisha ignored them, but each word was a tiny cut. At night, she returned to the shared room with Latoya Brooks, the close friend who had become her emotional anchor. Latoya, a single mother, often brought leftover bread from the hospital, sharing stories of her resilience. "We're warriors, Aisha," Latoya would say, holding her when she was too tired to speak. "Your boy's gonna see that." Even in her exhaustion, Aisha never stopped nurturing her engineering dream. In the dim light of the room, while Daniel slept in a worn-out crib, she studied technical books borrowed from the library. The idea for a self-sustaining ocean filtration system, born the night she watched the water swirl down the sink, became clearer. She salvaged parts from the plant, circuit boards, wires, broken sensors, and began building crude models on the dinner table. Latoya, though not understanding the science, always encouraged her. "I don't know what you're making, but you will change the world." One night, as Daniel cried from teething pain, Aisha held him, rocking him gently while gazing at her model. She realized the flaw. The system needed a self-adjusting mechanism to handle changing water flow. Inspired by Daniel's steady breathing, she drafted a new design, recycled sensors to regulate flow. "You're Mama's little engineer," she smiled, kissing his forehead. The next morning, she tested the model in the kitchen sink. Dirty water from the plant filtered cleaner than expected. That moment lit a spark of hope, not just for herself, but for Daniel, for a future where they wouldn't just survive, but make a difference. Still, Aisha's inner conflict simmered. She feared Daniel growing up in poverty, facing the same racial prejudices she had endured. Memories of James, of the cruel words, burden, mixed-race child, sometimes resurfaced, making her doubt her strength. But each time she looked at Daniel, she remembered her mother's words. Never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. LaToya remained a wellspring of strength, sharing her own story, being fired for standing up to a racist manager, yet still pressing on. "You're stronger than you think, Aisha," LaToya said. "Daniel's going to be proud of you." When Daniel began to smile, his blue eyes reminded Aisha of James, but she declared, "He has my eyes, the eyes of resilience." She taped a slip of paper to the wall with a handwritten message. "For Daniel, we will prove them wrong." Every night, she worked beside her model, not just for her engineering dream, but as a vow to her son, that they would break every barrier and prove their worth to the world. Winter 2010. Seattle was swept with cold winds, but inside Aisha Carter, now 25, a spark of hope had just ignited. After months of squeezing into a shared room with LaToya Brooks, working at the green tech recycling plant, and tinkering with her ocean filtration model, Aisha received an email from the University of Washington. She had been awarded a full scholarship for their environmental engineering program for non-traditional students. Standing in the public library, with Daniel asleep in a sling on her chest, Aisha read the email 3 times, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. "We did it, baby," she whispered, kissing Daniel's curly head. This wasn't just an opportunity for her. It was a promise for their shared future. But the new journey wasn't easy. To attend school, Aisha needed childcare and rearranged her work shifts. Through a community center, she found Rosa, an older Latina woman who agreed to care for Daniel at an affordable rate. "This little one will be safe with me, mija," Rosa said warmly, gently brushing Daniel's hair. Aisha nodded, feeling relief and the gnawing anxiety of leaving her son with a stranger. She used the last of her savings to buy a used laptop and a set of professional clothes from a thrift store. Black slacks and a navy blazer. Not perfect, but enough to help her confidently walk into class. On her first day at the University of Washington, Aisha stood outside the environmental engineering building, watching a stream of young students with branded backpacks and sleek laptops pour in. As the only black woman in the program, she could feel the curious and sometimes unwelcoming stares. In the lecture hall, while sitting in the back row, a student named Blake whispered to his friend, "A diversity scholarship again. How are we supposed to compete with that?" Aisha clenched her fists, the insult echoing James Whitmore's past cruelty in her mind. But she told herself, "I'm here to prove them wrong." Her professor, Dr. Evelyn Moore, a renowned black environmental scientist, soon became an unexpected anchor. During a lecture on microplastic filtration, Aisha raised her hand, her voice trembling slightly. "Professor, could centrifugal vortex force separate particles smaller than 5 micrometers? It might reduce energy consumption." The class fell silent, all eyes on her. Dr. Moore smiled and nodded. "That's a fascinating idea. And you are?" "Aisha Carter," she replied, heart pounding. "See me in my lab on Thursday, Aisha. I'd love to hear more about your idea." That Thursday marked a turning point. In the lab, Aisha presented her rough filtration model built from salvaged components. Dr. Moore, her eyes sharp yet warm, scrutinized the device. "You taught yourself all this while working in a factory and raising a child?" she asked, astonished. Aisha nodded, sharing stories of late nights at the dining table, Daniel asleep beside her. "I want to do something for the ocean and give my son a better future," Moore placed a hand on her shoulder. You have potential, Aisha, but you'll have to fight against a lot of bias out there. I've been where you are, and I'm going to help you. Aisha's internal conflict still lingered. She feared she wasn't good enough to compete with students with every advantage. Memories of James calling her a burden and uneducated would occasionally creep in, making her doubt herself. But every time she looked at Daniel, now 1-year-old toddling down the engineering hallways, she found strength again. One evening, after Daniel fell, and then stood back up, beaming with a wide grin, a security guard clapped. This little engineer's tough. Aisha laughed, pride welling in her chest. She said my son would be an engineer, just like his mom. In the lab, Aisha refined her filtration model, integrating Dr. Moore's suggestions on biodegradable polymers to boost efficiency. One night, during testing, she watched dirty water run through her device and came out crystal clear. She gasped in joy. I did it, Daniel, she whispered, even though he was fast asleep in his stroller. At that moment, Aisha knew she wasn't just a black single mother, but an innovator. With Dr. Moore's mentorship and the love she poured into Daniel, Aisha finally began to see her path forward, not without obstacles, but no longer without direction. Spring 2011. Rare sunlight streamed through the University of Washington's Environmental Engineering Lab windows, where 26-year-old Aisha Carter carefully adjusted her rudimentary ocean filtration model. After a year of relentless study, balancing single motherhood and weekend shifts at the green tech recycling plant, Aisha had transformed an idea born from scrap components into a functioning device. Her hands, calloused from sorting e-waste, now moved skillfully across circuit boards, her eyes bright with focus as she checked the water flow through the system. Daniel, her 2-year-old son, sat nearby in his stroller, scribbling messy circles that resembled his mother's filtration device. Dr. Evelyn Moore, Aisha's inspiring black mentor, stood beside her, watching with satisfaction. You've refined the centrifugal vortex mechanism just as I suggested, Moore noted, checking the data on Aisha's old laptop. Your microplastic filtration efficiency is nearly 70%, far beyond standard models. Where did you learn all this, Aisha? Aisha smiled, her voice tinged with pride. From library books, sleepless nights, and watching water swirl down my kitchen sink. Moore laughed, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're proof that brilliance doesn't need a high-end lab. But Aisha's journey wasn't all triumph. As the only black woman in the engineering program, she constantly faced bias. During one group discussion, Blake, a wealthy white student, sneered. That diversity scholarship must have made it easy for you, huh? This place is competitive for people who earn their spot. Aisha felt her blood rise but responded calmly. Blake, I maintain a 3.8 GPA while raising a child and working night shifts. What have you done to change the world besides getting a 4.0? The group went silent, and a few classmates, like Zoe, a purple-haired girl, began looking at Aisha with newfound respect. Zoe became an unexpected ally. During a study session at the campus cafe, she pulled up a chair next to Aisha. I don't know everything you've gone through, but your filtration idea is awe-inspiring. Zoe helped Aisha refine the sensor calibration code, a crucial leap forward. That small support helped Aisha feel less isolated in a space where she often felt invisible. Yet, her internal struggle lingered. Was she perfect enough? Would prejudice sabotage her dreams? James Whitmore's insults, uneducated, a burden, still echoed at times, making her question her place. But Daniel, even at just 2 years old, remained her most significant source of strength. One evening, when Rosa was sick, Aisha brought him to the lab. He pointed at her model and babbled, "Clean water, Mama." Aisha laughed, hugging him close. "That's right, baby. Mama's cleaning the water for the world. She let him draw another filter machine with crayons, and the curious boy added a little solar panel on top. "To make it run forever, Mama," he said. That childlike, creative spark stirred something in Aisha. Integrating renewable energy might be her next breakthrough. The opportunity came when Dr. Moore invited Aisha to present at the annual Innovation Showcase hosted by the engineering department, a chance for students to present their projects before professors and potential investors. Aisha hesitated. Her model looked crude compared to the polished designs of other teams, but Moore encouraged her. "It's not about appearances. It's about results. Let your technology speak." The night before the showcase, Aisha stayed late to fine-tune the system while Daniel slept on the lab's worn-out couch. When the device filtered microplastics with 75% efficiency, surpassing commercial models, Aisha held Daniel's tiny hand and whispered, "We're getting closer, my son." At the showcase, Aisha stood before a crowd, her voice shaky but clear. When she activated her system, murky water flowed crystal clear, and the audience applauded. Dr. Samuel Harris, a renowned oceanic researcher, approached her afterward. "Ms. Carter, your design defies conventional thinking. I want to mentor you in developing it further." Aisha was stunned. It felt like her dream was beginning to materialize. When she hugged Daniel, he beamed. "Mama's a superhero." At that moment, Aisha knew she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for Daniel, for every black woman ever doubted, and for a planet desperately in need of what she had to offer. Autumn 2012. Aisha Carter, now 28, stood in front of a small industrial garage on the outskirts of Seattle, her heart pounding with nerves and pride. After 2 years of intense study at the University of Washington and countless late nights refining her ocean filtration system, she was accepted into the university's startup incubator program with $50,000 seed funding. With guidance from Dr. Evelyn Moore, Aisha founded Horizon Innovations, a company dedicated to turning her concept of microplastic filtration from salvaged materials into a marketable reality. Daniel, her 3-year-old son, stood beside her, holding her hand and pointing at the makeshift sign that read, "Horizon Innovations." "Is this Mama's factory?" he asked. Aisha smiled. "Just for now, sweetheart. But from here, Mama's going to help clean the ocean." The startup journey was anything but easy. As a black woman and single mother, Aisha faced skepticism from potential investors. At one pitch session before a venture capital group, one investor asked, "What business experience do you have to run a tech company?" Aisha responded with steady conviction, "I built this technology from scraps, raised my son alone, and maintained a 3.8 GPA in an engineering program. That's the experience I bring." Despite her compelling response, she still caught doubtful glances, like they couldn't quite believe a black woman could successfully lead a startup. To build her team, Aisha brought on her best friend, LaToya Brooks, a single mother, to manage operations. With her background in hospital administration, LaToya brought practicality and fierce resilience. As they assembled the prototype in the garage, Aisha LaToya said, "You're doing something huge, but I'll make sure this thing runs like clockwork." Their small team, which included Zoe, the purple-haired former classmate from university, worked tirelessly to improve the filtration system, now incorporating renewable energy, a concept inspired by Daniel's crayon sketches. A significant opportunity came in 2016 when an offshore oil spill near Oregon contaminated miles of coastline. Aisha, reading the news on her phone while preparing breakfast for Daniel, knew this was the moment to field test her invention. She immediately called Dr. Moore. "Our system was built for disasters like this. I need to be there." Moore agreed and helped her borrow university equipment and secure an old van. Daniel, now 7, insisted on going along. I want to see Mama's machine save the ocean. With no childcare available, Aisha brought him along, saying, "You'll have to be Mama's special assistant, okay?" The 5-hour drive to Oregon was grueling. Aisha drove through the night, while Daniel slept in the passenger seat, his notebook full of filter machine drawings. When they arrived at Newport Beach, chaos unfolded. Rescue boats, helicopters, and environmental response teams filled the scene. Aisha approached the police barricade, flashing her student ID and a Horizon Innovations business card. She explained that I have a filtration system that can clean oil faster than standard methods. The officer, skeptical, replied, "We already have professionals on site. You can't come in, especially with a child." Aisha felt a surge of despair, but Daniel stepped forward, his voice clear. "My mom's machine cleans better than anyone's." His confidence caught the attention of Lieutenant Reyes, a Coast Guard officer nearby. "What system?" he asked. Aisha explained that her microflow filtration module could separate oil at 5 times the rate of traditional devices. Though doubtful, Reyes granted her 30 minutes to test the system at a small, heavily affected bay inlet. Aisha set up the system quickly. Daniel helped hand her tools, his eyes gleaming with excitement. As the device powered on, the oil-slicked water began to clear. Within 15 minutes, the inlet was visibly cleaner. Reyes took photos and called in more officials. "Filtration efficiency, 87%, Aisha explained, pointing to the data on her laptop. A local journalist filmed the demo, and environmental officials began to gather. "This technology doesn't exist in the commercial market," one scientist remarked. The result led to a minor government contract, pulling Horizon Innovations back from the brink of collapse and capturing the attention of several venture capital firms. In a motel room, Aisha and Daniel shared a pizza that night. She hugged him tightly. "We did it, baby. This is just the beginning." Daniel grinned, tomato sauce on his cheeks. "Mama's a superhero who saves the ocean." Yet inside, Aisha still felt anxious. This success was only a first step, and she knew the road ahead would be steep, especially as a Black woman entrepreneur in tech. She looked at Daniel and remembered her mother's words. "Never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough." Aisha felt ready for the greater battles with a new contract and an unwavering belief in her son. Summer 2025. From the top floor of Horizon Innovations headquarters in downtown Seattle, Aisha Carter, now 41, looked out over Puget Sound. In the same waters, she had once stood alone at the dock 16 years earlier, betrayed by James Whitmore. Now, she was the CEO of a $4 billion environmental tech empire, with contracts in 17 countries to clean the world's oceans. The sleek building, with its green walls and solar-powered windows, was a testament to her vision, a world where technology and nature coexist harmoniously. But the journey here wasn't just a financial triumph. It was a battle against the deep-rooted bias faced by a Black woman in a business world dominated by white men. Horizon Innovations had rewritten the rules. Aisha's microplastic filtration system, which was born from discarded components at Green Tech Recycling, was now the gold standard. Since the Oregon oil spill in 2016, the company has attracted significant venture capital and grown to a 200-person team of experts. It deployed its technology across polluted zones, including the Pacific Ocean and the Great Barrier Reef. In the glass conference room, Aisha led a meeting with her core leadership team: LaToya Brooks, now Chief Operating Officer, and Zoe, now Chief Technology Officer. LaToya reported that the contract with the Philippines improved filtration efficiency by 32%. Aisha nodded. "Good. However, we need to ensure the local communities benefit from the rollout." Despite her success, Aisha still faced prejudice. At a tech conference in Silicon Valley, An investor asked, "Do you have plans to bring in a more experienced CEO to help scale?" The implication was clear. Even after building a billion-dollar company, a black woman still wasn't seen as enough. Aisha smiled and replied, "I took Horizon from a garage to the public markets. My experience is in the results." The room erupted in applause, but inside, Aisha felt weary of always having to prove her worth. The echoes of James's old insults, uneducated, a burden, still haunted her, making her wonder if the world would ever truly accept her. Her greatest motivation was Daniel, now 14. With his father's blue eyes, but his mother's fierce resilience, he had just won a National Science Award for his self-powered river filtration system, inspired by Aisha's technology. In the company's lab, Daniel presented his idea to engineers twice his age. "Urban rivers have fluctuating pressure. My system adjusts flow automatically." The engineers nodded, impressed. Aisha, watching from the doorway, beamed with pride. MIT had invited Daniel to its gifted physics program, but he told his mother, "I want to stay in Seattle one more year to help you save the ocean." Since their Beacon Hill days, LaToya, Aisha's companion, was now a pillar of Horizon. During one meeting, she shared her experience of facing racial discrimination while job hunting and encouraged the team. "We're here not just for profit, but for communities no one else cares about." Her words reminded Aisha why she had started. Not just to clean oceans, but to create opportunities for those overlooked, as she once had been. Zoe, her once purple hair now faded, continued bringing technical brilliance to the company, improving the filtration system with biopolymer innovations, boosting efficiency by another 22%. Yet Aisha's internal conflict persisted. She was proud of Horizon, but worried about the pressure mounting on Daniel. "Is it too much for you?" she asked one night while they ate dinner in their modest apartment. Daniel shook his head. "I want to be like you, Mom. Change the world." But Aisha noticed moments of quiet in his eyes, as if he carried the weight of being a biracial prodigy in a world full of expectations. She hugged him tightly and whispered, "You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Just be yourself." One morning, Aisha received an email inviting her to be the keynote speaker at the Forbes 30 Under 30 conference in Chicago. Daniel would also be honored as the youngest recognized scientist. Looking out at Puget Sound, Aisha remembered the moment she tore up James's check. Now, she hadn't just survived that pain, she had built a legacy. But she didn't know that she would face James again in Chicago, in an encounter that would forever alter their lives. Ban Danai, Chicago, autumn 2025. The crystal chandeliers of the Four Seasons Ballroom glowed brilliantly, illuminating tailored suits, expensive gowns, and the commanding smiles of power at the Forbes 30 Under 30 conference. Aisha Carter, now 41, entered in a navy blue custom-designed dress by a black-owned fashion house, her curly hair elegantly pinned up, radiating the confidence of a CEO who had turned Horizon Innovations into a $4 billion environmental tech empire. Beside her stood Daniel, 14, dressed in a fitted tuxedo, his blue eyes alight with excitement as he prepared to be honored as Forbes' youngest featured scientist. Yet beneath her composed exterior, Aisha felt a storm stirring within. She knew that James Whitmore, the man who had rejected Daniel and humiliated her 16 years ago, would be in attendance, listed as a minor sponsor of the event. Aisha stepped onto the stage as the keynote speaker, her voice powerful and unwavering. 20 years ago, I came to Seattle with 2 suitcases, one filled with clothes and one with a dream many believed was impossible for a black woman without privilege. She spoke of her journey from a server at Pike Place Market to founding Horizon, emphasizing her mission to clean the oceans and uplift those pushed to the margins. The crowd applauded when she introduced Daniel, who confidently presented his self-powered river filtration system. Daniel said that river pollution isn't just an environmental issue, it's a matter of social justice. Investors nodded in approval. In the crowd, James Whitmore, now 48, stood in a shadowed corner, gripping a glass of whiskey. Whitmore Technologies had dwindled into a shell of its former glory, and James's presence at Forbes was a desperate effort to salvage his fading reputation. As he watched Aisha on stage, confident, commanding, he felt the ground beneath him shift. Daniel, with his unmistakable blue eyes and features mirroring James's own, was living proof of the gravest mistake he had ever made. The words he once hurled, burden, mixed-race child, echoed in his mind, choking him with regret. After the speech, Aisha and Daniel were surrounded by investors and journalists. A Tesla executive approached. "Your filtration system could integrate with our marine charging stations. We need to talk." Aisha nodded politely, but felt a familiar gaze from across the room. She turned and saw James walking toward her, tension written across his face. "Ms. Carter," he said, voice trembling, extending a hand. "That was an incredible speech. I'm James Whitmore. Whitmore Technologies." Aisha shook his hand, her expression calm but polite. "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. We met quite a long time ago." James pushed forward nervously. "I wanted to congratulate you. And your son. He's remarkable." Standing beside her, Daniel looked at James with curiosity, but no recognition. Aisha placed a steady hand on her son's shoulder. "Thank you. Daniel, this is Mr. Whitmore, a sponsor of the event." Daniel shook James's hand with a calm voice. "Nice to meet you, sir." James looked at the boy, his heart twisting as he realized Daniel didn't know who he was. He turned to Aisha, voice lowered. "Aisha, I need to talk to you. I was wrong. So wrong. I want to make things right." Aisha maintained her professional smile, but her voice was cold and cutting. "Mr. Whitmore, 16 years ago, you called me a burden and my son a complication. We've built our lives without you. I have investors and a mission to focus on. Excuse me. I have to go." She led Daniel away, leaving James frozen in place, pain flooding his eyes. As they walked, Daniel glanced back. "Who was that, Mom?" Aisha hesitated, then replied, "Just someone from the past, son. He doesn't matter." Inside, Aisha felt a storm of emotion. Facing James had reopened old wounds, but had also given her a sense of liberation. She was no longer the insulted server. She was a powerful CEO. Still, she worried for Daniel, afraid he might be hurt if the truth ever came out. Latoya, Horizon's COO at the event, noticed Aisha's unease. "You all right?" she asked, squeezing her friend's hand. Aisha nodded. "I'm okay. I won't let the past pull me down." Latoya smiled. "You're a warrior, Aisha. I always have been." As they left the ballroom, Aisha watched Daniel chatting excitedly with an MIT scientist, her heart swelling with pride. She had no idea that James was quietly snapping a photo of her and Daniel from a distance, desperately trying to hold on to what he had lost. Nor could she foresee that in just a few days, a bold strategic move by Horizon would force James to face a consequence far more devastating than personal regret. Chicago, late autumn 2025. The atmosphere inside the boardroom of Whitmore Technologies in Seattle was as heavy as an approaching storm. James Whitmore, now 48, stormed into the company headquarters, face pale after reading that morning's front-page article in the Wall Street Journal. Splashed across the top was a photo of him and Aisha Carter at the Forbes 30 Under 30 conference, alongside the headline, Horizon Innovations acquires controlling stake in Whitmore Technologies in surprise deal. Horizon, Aisha's company, the woman James had once dismissed as a burden 16 years earlier, now owned 56% of his company's shares. James felt the floor collapsed beneath him from losing control and the guilt gnawing at his core. In the boardroom, the directors stared at James with fury. Harold Winters, the board chairman, slammed the table. How the hell did this happen under everyone's nose, James? The CFO spoke tensely. Horizon acquired the shares through multiple shell companies over 6 months. Very strategic. The final 19% was bought from 3 board members at over 40% above market value. The 3 directors in question hung their heads, muttering, it was a financial decision. James, paralyzed, murmured, this can't be real. But reality arrived in the form of a call. When the boardroom phone rang, James's assistant stammered, Ms. Carter is on line 1. James pressed speakerphone, voice shaking. Aisha. Her voice came through, cold and professional. Mr. Whitmore, I assume your board meeting is intense. I won't take up too much of your time. This is a business transaction, not a personal vendetta. Whitmore Technologies is undervalued, and your patents complement our product line. James, losing composure, snapped. You're doing this to get back at me. In the past. Silence lingered. Then Aisha replied, her voice razor-sharp. You give yourself too much credit, James. I did this to protect my technology from corporations like yours, entities that care more about profit than the planet. Her words cut deep. James, forgetting the boardroom was listening, whispered, What about Daniel? He deserves to know who his father is. A soft gasp rippled through the room. Aisha's voice trembled slightly, then steadied. Daniel already has a birth father, Dr. Samuel Harris, who taught him how to fish and who's been there at every science fair. You were just a DNA donor, James, she concluded. We'll be holding a restructuring event at Whitmore headquarters next week. You're welcome to attend. The line clicked off, leaving James stunned under the gaze of his board. Winters stood. James, you need to take immediate leave. We'll be reviewing your position. Back in Seattle, Aisha sat in her office at Horizon Innovations, staring out at Puget Sound. The call with James had shaken her more than she cared to admit. It wasn't because of lingering emotion that had died 16 years ago, but because she now fully grasped the power she held. And yet, her internal conflict remained. She worried about Daniel, now 14, who had learned the truth about James through a difficult conversation Aisha had waited years to have. Did I do the right thing? She asked LaToya during lunch. LaToya, ever direct, replied, You protected your tech. You protected your mission. James made his choices. Don't let him make you doubt yours. Daniel walked into the office after lab that afternoon, holding his engineering notebook. I heard you talking to Mr. Whitmore, he said quietly. I'm not angry at him, but I don't need him either. You're all I need, Mom. Aisha hugged him, tears falling silently. She remembered her mother's words. Never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. The takeover of Whitmore wasn't about revenge. It was her way of ensuring her technology served the planet, not corporate greed. The next morning, Aisha approved the Wall Street Journal photo of her and James. She knew it would spark questions about their past, but she faced it head-on. No comment, she instructed her communications director. This wasn't to humiliate James, but to affirm that she had transcended the biases meant to cage her. As Daniel prepared his upcoming speech for MIT, Aisha watched him with quiet awe, realizing that her true victory wasn't in acquiring a company, It was in building a future for her son, one no longer shaped by the past. Winter 2025, Seattle. The former headquarters of Whitmore Technologies now bore a new emblem, Horizon Innovations, its logo, a phoenix rising from ocean waves. Aisha Carter, 41, stood on a podium in the crowded grand atrium, her eyes scanning a diverse audience of employees, press, and students from local schools. Just weeks after acquiring 56% of Whitmore Technologies, Aisha announced a $50 million annual scholarship program for youth from underserved communities. I was once a black waitress at Pike Place Market and was told I wasn't good enough. Her voice echoed powerfully. Today, I'm standing here to say that opportunity can change a life, how it changed mine and my son's. Daniel, now 14, stood in the wings, proudly watching his mother. He had just returned from a presentation at MIT, where he was praised for his self-powered river filtration system. But today, he was here to support the woman who taught him that value isn't in bloodlines, but our choices. Aisha continued, "This program isn't just about funding. It's about faith in dreams the world ignores. We will invest in engineers, scientists, and the changemakers of tomorrow." In the crowd, James Whitmore stood quietly, almost invisible. The Whitmore Technologies logo had been replaced, and he, once a powerful CEO, was now just a guest. He watched Aisha, the woman he once dismissed, now a global icon. And Daniel, the son he never knew, stood as living proof of what he had lost. The Wall Street Journal photo of him and Aisha had stirred public curiosity about the past. Aisha had chosen not to comment, letting her success speak for itself. After her speech, James tried to approach her, but her assistant team blocked his path. Instead, Daniel noticed him, stepped forward and said, "You're Mr. Whitmore. You've been wanting to talk to my mom." James swallowed hard, staring into eyes identical to his own. "Daniel, I truly admire what you and your mother have done." Daniel nodded, voice steady. "Thank you, sir. I know who you are. My mom told me everything, how you met and left when you found out about me." James paled, voice shaking. "I was wrong, Daniel. I want the chance to know you." Daniel offered a polite but resolute smile. "My mom taught me to treat everyone kindly, even those who didn't treat us the same. But I already have my mom, Dr. Harris, and Horizon. I don't need anything else." He shook James's hand, then turned away, leaving James rooted in place, heavy with regret. From a distance, Aisha witnessed the exchange, her heart tightening. She had once feared the truth of James would hurt Daniel, but his strength overwhelmed her with pride. LaToya Brooks, Horizon's COO, stood beside her and gently took her hand. "That kid is as strong as his mother," she whispered. Aisha smiled, eyes glassy with emotion. "He's everything to me, LaToya." LaToya, who had been by her side since the hard days in Beacon Hill, nodded. "You didn't just build a company, Aisha. You built a family. That's the real victory." After the event, Aisha and Daniel left the headquarters in a custom electric Mercedes. As the car glided past Puget Sound, where James had once abandoned her, Aisha looked out the window, filled with a quiet sense of completion. She hadn't taken over Whitmore Technologies for revenge, but to protect her mission, cleaning the oceans and creating opportunities for people like herself. But deep down, she admitted that her encounter with James at Forbes had reopened old wounds. "Did I do the right thing, letting that photo published?" she asked Daniel. He squeezed her hand. "You did the right thing because you didn't run from it. I'm proud you're my mom." Then, Daniel added thoughtfully, "I'm not angry at Mr. Whitmore. Don't feel anything. Family is who stays. Right, Mom? Aisha nodded, remembering her mother's words. Never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. She and Daniel had chosen to stay with each other through everything. As their car moved through the city of Seattle, a city that had witnessed both her pain and her triumph, Aisha knew her legacy wasn't in the takeover of a company. It was in raising an extraordinary son and building a meaningful life that required no one's approval, not even James's.